Today on Yellowhammer TV Live, there is a lot to discuss. We'll discuss this Barcelona terror attack and the media's somehow absurd fascination that Charlottesville somehow made this happen. It seems absolutely ridiculous, but it's exactly what's happening on television. The Birmingham Monument controversy continues, and Trump's bad week may finally come to an end. It is Friday after all. Let's go ahead and get to the headlines. The lone wolf terror attack idea is thrown out the window on this particular event involving radical Islam in Europe. In Barcelona, we have a car ramming into people. We also have events happening in other parts of Spain as well, all connected. They believe there is a terror cell afoot, and they are still looking at this point for more individuals who may be connected with this. The American media is still dealing with the fallout from the Charlottesville attack, which was domestic terrorism, but doesn't appear to be part of any larger group. Just seems to be one guy deciding he's going to be violent in the moment. The media, however, really feels like they need to make this a comparable issue. Wolf Blitzer yesterday on CNN asked the question, if the radical Islamists were motivated by what happened in Charlottesville. Guys, these are completely different things. One, we have a recent history of an idea of radical Islam where they have told their followers, get in cars, stab people, hit them with bricks if you have to, if you can't get guns. The Charlottesville situation is one lone lunatic, part of a bigger group, I would argue, of people who came from across the place, but nobody instinctively saying, let's get in cars and run people over. Why are we treating these as if they are the same thing? Why is the media doing that, Frank?
Well, I'm not certain, and you may be aware of this. Wolf Blitzer, I think, was on live TV and said what popped in his head. It may have just been one incident, but it is clear, I think, especially now, this morning, now that we're hearing that there were multiple people shot in connection with this in Barcelona, that they are, there's no relation at all.
Yeah, I think that's true. Stan, is there a reason why, I mean, Americans like to make things about Americans. I mean, that's mostly what we like to do. Why is there almost seemingly an insistence that these are the same thing? Why is that happening?
Well, you hit it on the head. It's the blame America first mentality that is in the media. I mean, these guys, you know, as quickly as they could back in 911, they wanted to try to figure out why we're the ones that caused it. You know, the only thing I can see similar between the two situations is that, you know, a lot of times people have these ideologies, or they say they do, but there are just some folks out there that are downright crazy and mean. And that's what it takes to do these things. But there is an ideology, there is a philosophy behind what was done in Barcelona, and it's entirely different and not connected whatsoever to what's going on in America.
You know, I watched the coverage of this thing, and with all these terror attacks that happen, we tend to have this idea that all Republicans, including the President of the United States in Charlottesville, need to come out, condemn, make it clear that they're not a part of this, even tacitly saying, well, these people had a right to get out there and protest, is sort of you're finding yourself on the side of being called a Nazi sympathizer. At the same time, these are the same people that drive things like hashtag not all Muslims. Frank, why? Why am I having to defend myself on social media as a conservative, yet at the same time, hashtag not all Muslims is a trend?
Well, I'm not. Here's the thing. The idea that everyone should come out every time there's anything in the public and have to address it, that's a bit far-fetched. However, I think trying to shoehorn the way Trump has reacted into just that scenario.
Oh, no. Let's be clear here about Trump for a second. We're going to talk about Trump's bad week. He took too long to come out on the Charlottesville thing, said the wrong thing. Then he came out too soon on the Barcelona thing before the facts came in, and they started using it to pound him. We'll get into Trump's terrible week here in just a little bit. Let's move to Birmingham. This monument controversy continues. Stan, we have yesterday the Attorney General saying, or the other day, saying that he's going to sue the city of Birmingham $25,000 for every single day that they have this monument blocked off and covered. They're going to be a legal conversation about whether or not that's valid or not. there is a mayor's election happening in Birmingham next week, and we had a guest on yesterday, Shannon Reeves, make the point that this is politics. This is something that the mayor of Birmingham gets an immediate victory from a majority of his citizens, predominantly black voters who are going to elect that mayor. Now the other mayor's candidates are coming out. Is this politics? I mean, I didn't think about it at first, but it came up yesterday, and now we have members or people who are running for these seats saying the same thing. Politics or good policy? Good politics or good policy?
It's totally politics. I mean, the whole movement nationwide is totally politics. It's this racial divide, identity politics, and it's very blatant in Birmingham, and it's kind of an insult to voters. If any of them down there actually believe right now that it's anything other than politics.
The candidates running for mayor, including Frank Matthews, for those who don't know, who is sort of a racial gadfly and has been for a long time in Birmingham, has said for years he wanted that monument gone. But now he wants the plywood structure surrounding it gone, and he wants the monument. I mean, they're all trying to carve out this individual niche on what the right note is on this monument stuff.
As far as talking about politics, I think also, as far as Steve Marshall is concerned, it actually plays well.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So
I agree with that.
Politically, everybody who's involved, it's a win-win.
Oh, I would not. I mean, you could argue there might be a little scam going on here between. Maybe they got together and said, hey, look, you argue this side, I'll argue this side, we'll all win. Yesterday, or a few days ago, Donald Trump said, look, what's next? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson? And there's actually been multiple individuals, Angela Rye on CNN, some professors in Chicago and others who have said, yeah, let's get George Washington out of here. Let's get Thomas Jefferson off these things. Is that a serious movement? I mean, or is that the fringe of this fringe element?
I don't think. I think that is a fringe element. The polls indicate that most Americans don't want monuments taken down. A sizable portion would like to see Confederate memorials taken down, or statues, I should say.
Now, the question here, Stan, becomes the following. Can the media force this into a public policy? I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, we can watch as they can drive things, but the media at this point has taken the 100% position that these things are offensive and they need to come down. Can they convince the American people of that?
Ultimately, they will not. I think this thing is going to have a lifespan to it. But, you know, there is an ideology. And you ask a minute ago if it's fringe. It is fringe. It is foreign to most Americans. But, however, there is a consistent ideology which, taken to the nth degree, if you follow it and really believe it, it's taking down everything. I mean, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of people that could gather right now at the campus of Berkeley and give you exactly the reasons why every bit of it should come down.
Yeah. I think eventually maybe we'll just have little pedestals that said something happened. And we'll just put it there. On this date, something happened, but we don't want to talk about what it is. Back in the state of Alabama on the governor's race, it is becoming more apparent to most people that Governor Kay Ivey is running for office. So look no further than her decision to invite me down to swim in the Alabama State swimming pool next Wednesday, after Governor Bentley promised he'd let me and did not, but I'll be down there on Wednesday. It looks like she's going to run. And now we're seeing Twinkle Andrews Kavanaugh take her $500,000+ that she has, mostly given to her by her family, etc., and take that and move to the lieutenant governor's race. That leads me to believe that, A, obviously Kay Ivey is running because yesterday she founded her organization, or at least registered her organization, and B, she's going to be a formidable opponent. Stan, I mean, this is hers to lose at this point. She's done a good job so far, scandal-free, especially in light of what we already saw. This is hers to lose?
Oh, yes. Kay Ivey has made some critical early key decisions that are all good. I think she has good advisors, and Kay Ivey's good herself. And yes, she is running. I do expect that you're going to have near unanimous support among the different associations and trade groups in Montgomery. So she'd be the front runner, yeah.
Yeah, Frank, on the Republican side, it really seems like there is going to be a problem going after an incumbent Republican governor. It's always hard to beat an incumbent anyway. Right. But now you're going to have an incumbent Republican governor, as Stan said, the ability to raise money. But you also have guys like Tommy Battle, who's going to have a base of support. But we just watched a congressional race that was, or excuse me, a Senate race that was statewide, where we had a North Alabama candidate who was unable to get south of the Tennessee River and make any real impact on the race. I still, and there's an incumbent in a similar situation, almost the exact same situation, an appointment, or I guess a secession based on Governor Bentley's behavior, but she doesn't have that taint to her. She's a much stronger candidate than Estrange, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The taint from the Bentley connection is, I think it's very bad as far as Strange is concerned. As far as Tommy Battle goes, while I would love to see a governor battle, he does have an uphill battle.
Yeah, he's got an uphill battle.
So to speak.
David Carrington, another regionalized candidate, going to have a hard time. Del Marsh already said he's outstanding. Do any other big-name Republicans get in? And I don't even know if we would argue Battle and Carrington. John McMillan, I guess the agriculture commissioner, you could argue he's a big-name Republican. Twinkle Kavanaugh ran for multiple offices, statewide offices. She's got out of that race completely, writings on the wall, I think. So any other big-name Republicans jump in here?
Well, Senator Bill Hightower from Mobile has raised a pretty good bit of money. He's not too far behind Mayor Battle. I don't think anybody else will get in at this point. As far as anybody getting out, Twinkle was the one I expected to get out. That made sense for her.
Why does it make sense for her and not the other ones?
Because she can raise money, and she's got good name recognition. I don't, it's probably a female thing. I don't see her running against Kay.
Okay, all right, maybe that is, in fact, it. All right, back to the national stage. Here's something we have not seen a lot of. Republicans straight up turning against the President of the United States. Yesterday at a Chamber of Commerce event in Chattanooga, not too far north of the state of Alabama, you have Senator Bob Corker. He calls the president essentially incompetent and unstable. Stan, is this the beginning of the end of the president's rock-hard support? CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they have been unable to book Republican congressmen and senators on their programs since Donald Trump's been sticking his foot in his mouth about this Charlottesville thing. They've had a hard time getting them even on the program. Now you've got a southern United States senator calling the president of the United States essentially incompetent and unstable. Is the Republican electoral structure turning on the president of the United States?
I think that Corker is a little bit on the. I don't think he represents most Republicans in the South entirely. However, he's on to something. I mean, President.
He stood on stage with Donald Trump during the campaign. This wasn't a guy who was sort of like fine Trump. I mean, that's not who he was. He was never a rah-rah Trump guy. Yeah. At one of the events he spoke at, he even said, and I read this the other day when I was doing a little research on this, he's like, I didn't expect to speak here, but he still went to his event.
Right.
I mean, he's hardly was a never Trumper or even like I was, like fine Trump, that kind of thing. He was on board.
Yeah.
Unstable and incompetent. These are loaded. They're not even loaded. They're just straight up insults to the president. I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, I think that's probably going to continue. It's frustrating being a Republican these days because on one hand we have a base that just loves him, and I understand why. It's because of his agenda and because of his brand and his name. But when it comes to really conducting himself in the Oval Office, it is scary, 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 because the things he's doing will come back to work against us all.
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of the problem here. And, we'll get into the rest of the bad stuff that has happened for the President of the United States in a little bit. But, Frank, nobody did this to Barack Obama. I mean, there really wasn't, and it surely wasn't happening by August of his first year.
No.
People coming out and calling him unstable and incompetent. These are very strong words. This isn't tepid criticism.
Barack Obama also wasn't hopping on Twitter at 3 or 4 a.m. and sending out tweets that were spinning everyone up.
Sure.
And various other things. So I think Trump is unique.
Oh, sure, he's unique, but he's also finding himself in a position where it's a questionable, tenuous position because.
It's crazy how early people are turning on him in his term. We forget that this hasn't been going on that long.
No.
I mean,
we are in August. of his first year. And we already have United States senators turning on him. And again, there's 52 of these guys that are on his side, 3 of which he couldn't get on his side for the health care vote, so he was unable to get that done. Now he's lost an additional one, and we could argue whether he's lost him or not. That's a whole... And then he went after Jeff Flake and Lindsey Graham as well. I mean, it's not like this isn't the House of Representatives where he's got numbers and members to spare. These are all people he needs. It seems like you would stay out of this fight, Stan. If you were advising the president, you say, leave these guys alone.
Yeah, that's right, I agree. But here's one thing I would say, though, is that there is a difference between the way Democrats and Republicans conduct themselves. What I mean by that is this. In the Republican Party, it really is okay to argue and fight and even name call sometimes and to dissent with one another. On the Democratic side of things, they much more rule with a iron fist, top-down situation. You do not make a peep against the person who's the head of your party. In the Republican Party, it's a good bit more accepted.
Well, maybe it is more accepted. I think we're going to see more of it as Donald Trump's approval numbers continue to drop here. You're going to see people turn on him. We'll continue this conversation in our next segment. Keep it locked right here. You're watching Yellowhammer TV Live. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. We're with Stan McDonald and Frank Ward. We're going to continue our conversation about the president's awful, terrible, no good week. I mean, it's just been absolutely brutal. Frank, 40% impeachment. Now, I understand people don't trust polls. You know, we hear this all the time. But when I see numbers like 40% support impeachment, let's just say it's 30. I mean, right. let's say it is a little overblown. Again, we are in August. No high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, unless they're going to make the argument that he's unfit for office some way. But still, 40% talking about impeachment, that just seems a little crazy.
It does. And I think when most people are polled about impeachment, they're not thinking about treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. It's more or less a disapproval rating, I think, but an extreme disapproval.
Yeah, no, that's really what it is. It's like saying, not only do I not like this guy, I want him to remove him.
I really dislike them.
Stan, is there any in the Republican base that are just going, come on, man, besides me? I mean, I may be the only one saying, come on, you're the president of the United States. What are you doing? I want you to succeed. Stop shooting yourself in the face.
Well, I think that's the perspective of most Republicans. I think that they do want him to succeed. They're for his agenda. They like the fact that he has a strong base. But, there's a good deal of worry that a lot of the things that we talked about on the show, can he really be trusted? Does he really know where he's going? These tactics that he uses, does that come back and bite you? But, as far as the impeachment goes, this country's gone through significant upheaval from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. And the folks who have been ousted from power are, kicking up sand as best they can. And they're very, very angry.
And they have multiple people driving that anger in the media as well. Here's some interesting numbers from this poll. More than 7 in 10 Democrats, 72%, favor impeachment. Here's where Republicans have to worry mostly. It's trendy to call yourself an independent. I mean, I'm not a Republican. I just vote Republican every time. I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat. I say 58%, and this is the part that's interesting. Among independents, 38% said Trump should be removed from office. That's a huge number there. And only 7% of Republicans believe he should be removed from office. So obviously there's a partisan divide here. But you're a political consultant. 38% of independents, that's a problem, right, for Republicans? They don't just dislike the president. They want him impeached.
Well, those 38% independents, they pretty well waver all the time. Those are the people most susceptible to the present contemporary winds of and it's the media-driven. So, it says something. It says a lot, but those things can be recovered in a campaign because those people really are.
All right, let's talk about that, though, recovering. We're not talking about recovering from a bad bill or a bad week or a bad month. Frank, we're talking about recovering from people saying, I want him removed from office. It's something that never happens in this country. Rarely. We've seen some impeachments, but the reality is it's talked about a lot. But here are actual numbers where people talk about, I want him removed. If you're a Republican in a purple state in Congress, you've got to wonder, I got 38% of independents that want the guy impeached. That's going to impact me. Republicans in Congress, they need to worry about this.
Well, this feeds into what you were talking about earlier with Republicans turning against Trump. When you see numbers like this, it suddenly Republicans who weren't big, elected Republicans who weren't big fans of Trump to begin with, start to go, you know what, there's maybe some advantage to getting out in front early and registering my disapproval of Trump.
And part of the problem here, though, Stan, only 7% are Republicans. So if you start championing this, I mean, I already saw it yesterday, Bob Corker, all of a sudden he's a huge liberal. He was responsible for the Iran deal. He's always been against Donald Trump, which isn't true. But it's just he came out, stepped out against Trump. The Trump forces now are going after Corker, just like they went after Flake, just like they went after McCain, like they went after Collins, like they went after Murkowski. Is the idea you beat back Corker so bad, you run him down so much in the media, you make it clear that the Republican base is so adamantly against him? I mean, I can't wait to see what Trump tweets about him today. But, I mean, you beat him down so bad that other people are afraid to come out and say the same thing?
Well, that's probably what Trump is thinking. As far as, Trump supporters and I guess that's probably the idea, Dale. I wish they wouldn't do it, but they're going to do it. And you alluded to it a moment ago, the thing that's going to hurt the most, the soonest, is going to be the midterm elections.
Yeah.
And the doggone, there's polls right now for the Republican House members. Last I looked, looks terrible.
I think it was 13 points underwater, negative 13.
Yeah, terrible.
Generic Democrat versus generic Republican. We don't run generic. Districts are what they are. They're drawn certain ways. I mean, there's an advantage there for Republicans. You want to look at why this stuff is happening with the Confederate monuments? Along racial lines, 72% of black Americans and 53% of Hispanic Americans say Trump should be impeached and removed from office. 31% of white voters agree. So you just keep driving that divide angle here on the Confederate stuff, and you just keep pushing that stuff. There's an angle there as well. Question, worst week of his presidency? I mean, here we are, Friday morning. I just wish he'd take the day off so we could just wrap this up early, but is this the worst week of Donald Trump's presidency so far? And could we have said that last week and the week before? But is this week currently the worst week, Stan, of Donald Trump's entire presidency?
Well, that was a great question, but I don't think it is for one thing. I realize it's bad, but the one thing that saved him was his big win in Alabama on behalf of Luther Strange.
Okay, but how big is that win nationally?
Well, it was enough to keep it from being his worst week.
Oh, okay, all right, could have been worse. Frank, is this his worst week?
I think a strong case could be made, but the thing is, there's been so many bad weeks for Trump that it really is hard to. I think it'll be a few weeks out before we know the full implication of this.
All right, well, we'll continue to follow this. As a guy who wants Trump to succeed, I wish he'd rack up some good weeks in a row, but we'll hope for that. We'll be right back. When we come back, what's the biggest story of the day? We'll wrap up the week. Thanks for watching Yellowhammer TV Live. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. Let's talk about today's biggest story. Stan, what's important to you today?
Well, it's a big story for us in Alabama. Natalie Holloway they think they're really on to possibly finding her remains. A friend of Vandersloot's actually took the authorities. They found the remains, but it'll be a couple of weeks before we know.
Yeah, and that story has been going on forever, and hopefully there'll be some sort of end to that thing. Frank, what's important to you today?
I don't think anybody's heard about this, but there's an eclipse that's going
is that happening?
Yeah. Yes, it is, and I would say that's the biggest story because it'll be I think the last one in our lifetime here in North America.
Schools I'm living to 2045, so maybe the last one in your lifetime. Schools in North Alabama, one at least, has decided to let people out. All the schools will be worrying about what's going to be happening here with this, and all the kids, and they're having to get approval. The most important thing for me is this. I forgot to mention my wife's birthday yesterday, so happy birthday to Cindy. She's going out, and speaking of the eclipse, she's going to see the eclipse in, I think, Asheville as part of her birthday. So the most important thing for me, I don't have to deal with her for the weekend. I'm just kidding. I love you, Cindy. We'll be back on Tuesday, Yellowhammer TV Live.